Play with the blocks. When you start learning a language, you will often start with one or two words, simple messages. For example, yo soy, or simply soy, I am. As you learn different words to talk about yourself, play with them. We start with yo soy, and then you can add things on the left if you're a man. Soy un hombre, soy español, soy francés, soy inglés. Down in the bottom left corner, soy profesor, soy pintor. At the bottom, in the middle, soy de España, soy del Reino Unido, and so on. And as you keep learning new words, you can play with them to see how many different messages you can already create just by combining them. Don't just use Google Translate. The fun and benefit of learning a language is the process your brain follows to make connections, put blocks together to create messages, and break the code. Google Translate does not give you any of that. If anything, it can add confusion and misunderstanding where context is key. For example, when summer finally arrives and temperatures start climbing, you say it's hot, talking about the weather and the temperature. But you do not say this in Spanish, es caliente. That would be a word for word translation, and it doesn't apply to this context. You can use es caliente to describe something that is hot to the touch. For example, el fuego es caliente. So, in this situation, the English it's hot can be translated as es caliente, but it's only about talking about something that is hot to the touch. In Spanish, expressions to do with the temperature and the weather use a different structure, environmental things you cannot touch. Hace calor. That's the equivalent to it's hot, talking about the weather. So, in this situation, talking about the weather, the English it's hot translates as hace calor. You cannot translate it word by word here. Now, let's see how you can use every word you learn to make longer and more complex sentences. This will also help you internalize the structures so that you do not need to think so much or translate from your native language. When you practice and repeat these structures, they become natural to you so that they are ready to be spoken when you need them. Let's start with the most important verb in any language, ser, to be. How do we put ideas into sentences? You need at least a subject, which is someone doing something or being something. That would be the subject, and in this case it's yo, I. And then you need a verb, an action. In this case it's soy. Yo soy, I am. But you can add complements to the verb. A complement can be an adjective, a describing word, an attribute. So here I've got the subject, yo, I, that's the person doing the action. Then I've got the verb, soy, which is the action. And now I have added an adjective or attribute or describing word that describes me. It's española, that's about my nationality. An attribute is a characteristic or description of character, physical trait, nationality, profession, anything to do with me. So that would be in this case española. Play with this. Add all the combinations you can think of with the words you are learning. For example, yo, that's the person doing the action, soy, the verb, the action, and then what else can I put here instead of española? I could have profesora, I could have europea, I can have británica. Remember to use the appropriate gender. In my case, I need the final a. That's the attribute, the characteristic about myself. And now the sentence is a bit longer and I can make many more combinations with all the words that I have learned. And you can also make it negative by adding no in front of the verb. So here I would just say, yo no soy española. Yo no soy profesora, and so on. You are also learning lots of other verbs like trabajar, to work. To make a sentence, the minimum full sentence that you can have, you only need two elements. You need the subject, yo, that's the person doing the action, and then a verb. In this case, trabajo. That's the action, and that means I work. Yo trabajo. With that, you've got a full idea, a full sentence. You don't need anything else, but of course, we can make it longer, and that's what we are working towards. Remember, we do not usually use yo because the ending of the verb makes it clear I am talking about myself. If we use yo too much, we can sound repetitive. I only add it here to help us see the structure of the sentence, what's what and what role each word plays, just so we can see how the structure works. But remember, you don't really need it, and that's why it's in brackets. And again, just like we saw with the verb ser, we can add complements. And in this case, they can be quite long. So we have the sentence yo trabajo. Now I'm going to say where I work, and that's going to be called a complement of place because that's about where, the place where I work. And usually this will be made of three words. The first one is going to be en, most of the times, in here, all the time, en. Then we have the article, which is that word una, right? In English, a. En una, and then we have the place of work, hospital, lab, whatever that is. So here we have all the different possibilities that you already can make because you have learned all these words in either term 1 or term 2 of your Spanish course. So I can read those here. Yo trabajo en un hospital. Yo trabajo en un laboratorio. Yo trabajo en un parque. Yo trabajo en una oficina. Yo trabajo en una escuela. Yo trabajo en mi casa. Remember that we don't pronounce every individual word separately, but we run them together. If I was going to pronounce it individually, for example, the first one, it would be yo trabajo en un hospital. En un hospital. But I'm not going to pronounce word by word individually. I'm going to run them together, and that's going to be en un hospital. En un hospital. And also you can link the final o of the word trabajo with the beginning of with the preposition en. So you got o and e together. You also run those two together a little bit. So just one more time, the first one. Yo trabajo en un hospital. Trabajo en un hospital. And we can also have a complement of company. Who am I working with? So before we saw where, and now it's with whom. And that's another complement. And in this case, it's the same idea. We've got a preposition. In this case, it's con. Then we've got the article, uno, una, or sometimes something else like mucha or mi, possessive. And then a noun, a person. So I can have yo trabajo con un compañero. I work with a partner. Yo trabajo con un profesor. I work with a teacher. Yo trabajo con un doctor. With a doctor. Yo trabajo con mucha gente. With a lot of people. Yo trabajo con mi mujer. I work with my wife. And you can have here lots and lots of possibilities. You can't imagine how many you can do already with the words you know. And hopefully you can see with this how many more sentences you can create just thinking about the words you know, putting them together, coming up with lots of different messages, and they will become your own. They will be internalized rather than having to translate with something like Google Translate. You are creating the sentences yourself, playing with the blocks so that in the end, the combination of blocks are natural to you. And yet another prepositional phrase, another complement. In this case, we can talk about why we do something, for what purpose. And that will be introduced with another preposition, para. And here we have, after para, we have actually what we call the infinitive, we have the neutral form of the verb because we're talking about the purpose of why you're doing this, why do you work? In order to earn money, para ganar dinero, in order to travel, para viajar, in order to learn, para aprender. So another complement of purpose in this case that we can add to the simple sentence yo trabajo. So all together, yo trabajo para ganar dinero, yo trabajo para viajar, yo trabajo para aprender. Querer, to want. It is used to order food and drinks. So we start again from the minimum full sentence we can have, which is just two words, yo, or it's understood. We can leave it out, and we should leave it out most of the times. So it's just here for clarity. I've got yo, either present or understood, and then quiero. Quiero is the verb, and that's the main one we need to express what we want. So even if we don't say yo, it's obviously understood, it's implied. There's always a person doing the action, even if we don't say it. But we can see the two elements that are necessary to make a full sentence. Very simple, just yo quiero, I want, and then we can add what it is that we want. And now we add complements to the verb. We started out with yo quiero, and now we can add what do I want, and that's what we call the direct object. And the direct object is just a noun phrase, which means it's basically a noun, like churros, a thing, an object or something. And sometimes it's preceded by an article, una, that's a, like un café, because it's very specific, a coffee, un café. Sometimes it can be a number, because it's the quantity that we want. Dos cervezas, or maybe tres cervezas, depending on how thirsty we are. And then it can be also just the noun, churros. Quiero churros, because we don't specify how many. Usually they just come in a bunch, and we can just use the plural. Quiero churros. So I'll just read all of them here. Yo quiero un café. Yo quiero una tortilla. Yo quiero dos cervezas. Yo quiero churros. Yo quiero patatas fritas. And you can add so many more things here with all the words you learned when you were talking about food and drinks, ordering food and drinks while you were studying the course in term 1. But you can also have a complement that's just an action, because that's what you want to do. It is still the direct object, that's the what do you want, but in this case it's not a thing, it's an action that you want to do. So that will be in the infinitive. In English, to speak, to learn, to work, to travel, to cook. In Spanish, the infinitive is the neutral form of the verb, the way it comes up in the dictionary, and it ends with AR, ER, or IR. So I have yo quiero hablar. I want to speak. Yo quiero aprender. I want to learn. Yo quiero trabajar. I want to work. Yo quiero viajar. I want to travel. Yo quiero cocinar. I want to cook. ¿Y tú? ¿Qué quieres? And you can even add complements to the complement. So you have yo quiero hablar, I want to speak or to talk. And then you can add a complement of company. With whom do you want to do that? And that goes with all of them, really. So you can, again, combine so many more. You've got all the different elements clearly seen here in circles. Yo, the person doing the action, myself. Quiero, that's what I'm doing. That's my action. In this case, is wanting, but okay, that's the action. Then I've got the what do I want to do? That's a direct object in gray, an action in the infinitive. And then I've added with whom I want to do that. So that will be a prepositional phrase, prepositional because it's introduced by the preposition con, with. And then I've got the article, el, la, un, una, or a possessive, me, my, and then a noun, the person, Director, camarero, pareja, amigo, doctor, familia, hijo, hermano, primo, vecino, amigo, so on. So all here you can combine them, but I'm just going to read a couple, just like reading them as if they were in a line, but actually I can play with them and combine. Yo quiero hablar con el director. Yo quiero aprender con el camarero. Why not? I want to learn with the waiter. Okay. Yo quiero trabajar con mi pareja. I want to work with my partner. Yo quiero viajar con un amigo. I want to travel with a friend, but I can mix them up. I could just do the first hablar with the last con mi familia. Yo quiero hablar con mi familia. But imagine the combinations you can already create, which are lots and lots and lots. Try and see how many you can make, just like this. You can also think of someone else and talk about them rather than you. For example, mi hijo, mi amigo, mi profesora. So the example now it's going to be mi hijo es, my son is, and then the same thing we've just done, but in the third person, which means the third person. Not me, not you, a third person, which is him, my son. Él, mi hijo. Mi hijo es. So again, we're going to add complements to this verb. We started with mi hijo es, my son is, exists, is, es, and now actually I'm going to add an attribute, a characteristic about him, a trait about him. In this case, it can be a profession, it can be nationality. So play with this, add all the combinations you can think of with the words you are learning. Mi hijo, the subject, the person doing the action, es, the action, the verb, to be. And notice there is a different ending, of course. I had yo soy, I am, but now I have mi hijo es, because that's my son, not me. Third person, es. Mi hijo es, thankfully, very similar to English, is, es. And now the attribute. Remember to use the appropriate gender. If I started with mi hijo, a man, because I've got this o at the end, then the characteristic or trait or attribute or adjective is going to be masculine. Profesor. Mi hijo es profesor. Mi hijo es doctor. Mi hijo es mecánico. Mi hijo es ingeniero. And remember, of course, you can also use the negative, because you might be thinking, well, there's only one profession my son has, and I cannot imagine making it up if that's what he is. Well, you can then use no. Mi hijo no es profesor. Mi hijo no es doctor. Mi hijo no es mecánico. And like this, you can say whatever you like, many more combinations. Next verb is tener, very important verb as well. Tener, to have, used to express possession, family relations, things we have, and age as well. So once again, we start with the minimum full sentence, and that will be yo tengo, I have. Yo tengo, subject, person doing the action, and the verb tengo. And now we can add complements to the verb. And again, we can have a direct object, which is what. Yo tengo, I have, but what do I have? ¿Qué tengo? That's the direct object, the thing that I have, or the person, the family, and usually just a noun phrase. Remember, like before, an article and a noun, or it could be a number as well. Yo tengo un hijo. Yo tengo una hija. Yo tengo amigos. Yo tengo un coche. And how many things you can think of that you have. Yo tengo, yo tengo. You can add more information about something or someone with a whole sentence introduced by que. Add more information with que. We can use que to add more information about un hijo, a son. The first bit is tengo un hijo que. I have a son that. Number 2 is the verb, se llama, is called. And number 3, in this case, it's the name. So the simple sentence was, yo tengo un hijo, But now I want to give some details about my hijo, and I can do that with the whole sentence introduced with que. Yo tengo un hijo que se llama John. This is like using just an adjective. So this is the same information we have in the previous page, but I wanted to show you that you can just have one single word describing the son in this case, no, in this sentence. Yo tengo un hijo, I have a son, and now I want to say something about him. It could just be simply estupendo. I've got a wonderful son. Yo tengo un hijo estupendo. Yo tengo un hijo joven, a young son. Yo tengo un hijo mayor, uh, who is old or older. But instead of just one word, we've got a whole sentence, que se llama John, but it's still the idea of an adjective or a sentence or some information about un hijo. Another example, yo tengo un hijo que estudia español, o yo tengo un hijo que estudia alemán. Yo tengo un hijo que trabaja en China. You can add many more. You can make even more combinations than you did before because now you're talking about someone else, maybe a friend or your wife, your husband, your neighbor, your cousin, anybody. You can talk about someone else and then add something about them, which can be a whole sentence, and it can be using all those verbs that you already know. One more example. Yo tengo un hijo que vive en un piso. And you can keep going. You can keep going using que to add more information about something you've said before, and it can be really, you can keep adding sentences. So in this case, we've got two. Yo tengo un hijo que vive en un piso que está en España. So the last sentence, que está en España, that is in Spain, that is about piso. It's un piso que está en España, and that belongs to the sentence about my son. Un hijo que vive en un piso que está en España. So you can see the sentences, how you can build up, make it bigger and bigger. The possibilities are endless. Yo tengo. Yo tengo un primo. Yo tengo un primo simpático, friendly. Yo tengo un primo muy simpático. Yo tengo un primo muy simpático que tiene 20 años. Yo tengo un primo muy simpático que tiene 20 años y vive en un piso. Yo tengo un primo muy simpático que tiene 20 años y vive en un piso con su novia, with his girlfriend. Yo tengo un primo muy simpático que tiene 20 años y vive en un piso con su novia de Suecia. So with his girlfriend from Sweden. Yo tengo un primo muy simpático que tiene 20 años y vive en un piso con su novia de Suecia que se llama Lucía. I have a cousin, a very friendly cousin, that is 20 years old and lives in a flat with his girlfriend from Sweden, whose name is Lucia. Wow, and you can keep going if you like.